So this is probably one of those conversations that's going to leave a lot of people hungry, Erica, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So let's jump right in. Talk to me a little bit about how the whole journey to writing a book about pizza got started.
Absolutely. So basically, like I've worked in the marketing area for most of my life. And a few years back, I was in Tampa, Florida. My family and I decided to go back to Western PA for a year. My dad had just had heart surgery. And we have had a pizzeria since 1960 back there. So my dad was recovering from heart surgery. And I said, hey, why don't we go into the family business? I can help you with your marketing and you can just, work a few hours a week. And my dad, I think at the time he was grumpy, he said, I don't believe in marketing. I said, well, it's all right. We'll just drive in together. I'll help you for free. It'll be good. So we started going into the pizzeria together and he would tell me all these stories on the way there and the way home. And I just became really inspired to write a book about my grandfather.
I love that. I mean, my grandfather played a massive role in my life as well. I remember being little and chasing him on all his outdoor adventures. And then unfortunately, he had a massive stroke, so the story kind of changed to help and take care of him. But now in my adult life, I find myself looking back a lot and sharing those stories. And I think there's something very special within the telling of those stories that really can help anybody that's kind of finding themselves a little stuck in life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, my grandfather was like a really big inspiration to me because he immigrated here from Italy with his family and they had nothing. They came over. My great grandfather was a coal miner. My grandfather was a coal miner. He was pulled out of school when he was like 13 or 14 years old. And he saved his money and he worked hard his whole life. And he wanted to do something that would help and support his family. And that's why he opened this pizzeria. So the book is really full of his life, his trials, and his tribulations, and a lot of the things that he ran into. And he never stopped in his effort toward that goal.
So I get a feeling that there's a lot of tales of overcoming adversity and really struggling and finding growth under fire.
Yeah, that is the whole premise of the book is just someone who came over with nothing, had a lot of drive, didn't give up, had a very clean, clear purpose of what they wanted their life to be, and just wanted to create something beautiful and memorable for their family.
That's where a lot of us can really relate to it because we feel like we're missing a lot of the tools, although we have the dream, we have the aspiration. But it's like standing at the bottom of a mountain looking up, going, I don't have the rope with me. So I'm not even going to try. And, I feel like when you step in and you actually start getting your hands dirty and kind of pulling yourself up that mountain, that dream that you're working toward really starts to build a lot of gratitude as well as a really deep sense of purpose that fuels the drive to work your way up.
Yeah, and I think it's never easy. Like anything that someone does that's worthwhile, you're going to have obstacles, you're going to have things that get in the way, and it's not something where you just, decide you want to do something and then it just comes to you.
Very true. And, with that idea of it's never easy, it's not supposed to be because, life has two sides and each of them is very valid. You can't have one without the other. You can't appreciate winning without losing. You can't appreciate success without the struggle. And it really takes diving back into like that childlike sort of mindset where, yeah, this hurts and this is hard, but I can still get up and do it. Just like how when we learn to walk.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like looking at his journey, it's like one of those messages of just like, don't ever give up. If you're going through a tough time, keep pushing through till you get to the other side of it, because there's usually calm waters after a storm.
Of course. And, when you go out into nature and you see a big, gigantic tree that's missing a couple of its higher up branches, you think about the fact that a storm came through. And even though it has the strength of being tall and firmly in place, it has that disadvantage of not being able to sway with the wind. So therefore, it ended up cracking and breaking those branches. And we got to look at ourselves along the way and really get to know our strengths, but also get to know those weaknesses and how they correlate and how they can actually accent one in each other.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think, until you hit adversity, sometimes it's hard to deal with it. And then after you've had it for a long time, then you start to, I think, be more adept at handling it and coming out the other side of it. But I think it's the initial, like, sometimes you estimate that things might be easier than they are.
Yeah, and it brings to mind a real good quote by Seneca, where it's not the defeats that come along the way that are shameful or that are bad. It's the fact that when it happens, the only thing you can look and say is, I never expected that. I never expected that part to happen. So really, it's about actually planning 2 or 3 steps ahead, but yet having that ability to sway with the wind.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad always said to me, like, you learn more from losing than you do from winning. And when I was younger, I didn't like that because you want to win. But now that I'm older, it really does make sense because you learn more.
That's one of those things that I think a lot of us really stay stuck in, is that boat that we don't want to face the defeats that would give us the progress toward where we truly want to be. So we just sit in that little valley. We just live that little life that's comfortable, and there's not much room for growth within that because you're not testing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And I know from my journey along the line of testing myself and looking ahead and planning, one of the hardest things to actually wrap your head around is the idea of what success would truly look like and feel for you, let alone be able to get there and truly put yourself in it and enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. I think one thing, I mean, I'm a new author, so this is kind of almost like a new road and adventure for me, but it was like writing down my goals and then trying to figure out each day, like, what can I do to get closer to that goal, even if it's just like one or two things, but just like, it was like, okay, write the outline. Okay, so just write a chapter of the book. And this is a journey that took, a year to do. And then finish the book. Okay. Then I let the book sit for 4 months because I didn't know what to do with it. So then I thought, okay, I guess now I have to publish the book and then market the book. So it was just like it's a phases of, I think, an overall goal, but just all the sub goals that go into that.
I can relate a lot to that with the progress of my project because, it started out just digitally overall with the theme of dealing with my problems with anxiety, especially with interacting with people. And a big part of that was at some point it was going to go live in front of people. And I remember that first class, maybe the night before, I don't think I slept very well, but then that morning and that day, I sat there really trying, like my head was spinning with all the, you got to do this, you're going to do that, blah, blah, blah. Then you're going to fall on your face either way. So you just kind of deal with the struggle, but then you step in the door and it all just kind of comes out naturally. Like it's almost like a whole new plan that you really almost didn't perceive coming out. But then when you step back out and you're done, you realize, man, I did all that training and all these different things that made it where it was what was meant to be and the way it was meant to come out, which I think is a very cool feeling.
Yeah, I agree with you on that 100%. It's like doing something that you never think you're going to be able to do in a million years and then getting through that thing and just that feeling of, I guess it's fulfillment and just happiness of like, okay, I handled that obstacle.
And then you feel really amazing. And then you're like, I want to just keep on going. And that's where I think getting to achieve these goals that we set for ourselves that we end up pushing aside, when you re-tap into them and you get a small victory, you start building momentum and the momentum keeps going. And then you realize everything I need to achieve that goal is there in the environment itself. If I'm willing to think outside the box and maybe do a little bit of bushcrafting to build what it is that I need, I can do these things. I can achieve them,
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
which gets to, you know, the successful point where you've got this awesome pizzeria going on and you're building this sense of community. You're connecting with people, you're making really good attachments. And I feel like that's a huge thing when it comes to finding peace inside is those meaningful connections. So talk to me a little bit about what that process feels like and looks like for fostering those sort of connections.
So, I mean, I would say like, I was born into our pizzeria. My dad, I think, was also born into the pizzeria because my grandfather opened it back in 1960. And a huge part of this pizzeria was the community and bringing people together. And my grandfather, he worked around the clock, but there was this time during the day that was like between the morning and maybe 3 p.m. that the pizza place opened. And he would go and walk around and he would talk to the neighbors, and if people needed help with something, he would help them out. And everyone in town knew who he was. And so you have people that have been coming to this pizzeria since the day it was open, and you have like, their kids, their grandkids, their great grandkids. And it has really fostered a community of people that have supported this business for 65 years now. My grandparents were really generous and kind people. So Christmas Eve, anytime, like if they knew people didn't have somewhere to go, they would invite them to the Christmas Eve dinner. We sometimes would have 80 people at Christmas Eve. We always had it in the restaurant.
It's really cool. I love that. And it's kind of ironic too, because before we got together, I was talking to a friend of mine who was telling me, oh, an old Lakota story about a Tomy and how important community really is through that example because he was traveling and he ran into a bird and he loved the fact that the bird could fly. And, the bird invited him to come fly, but he couldn't do it no matter what he tried to do. And then finally they got together, the group of birds, and they took him to a high point and they helped him actually get up and soar with their support. But then when the
Wow.
birds let him try to go on his own, he fell. And nothing that he did on his own, he was able to achieve that again. And I think that that really represents the idea of how not only putting yourself in that position helps a community to come together and flourish, but it also really brings that same thing back to you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It does. I mean, my dad and I, we decided like, there were times during the year where I was like, hey, I need to film a bunch of content. And we have 16 different pizzas. And my dad would be like, I don't know who's going to eat all these pizzas. So we would be like, all right, let's host someone. Let's bring someone in. So I think we had the paramedics come in. We had people from the high school administration come in. So it was like once a year, we would kind of hold an event where we would host people, we'd feed them for free. We're able to get content, but then really it was just nice to host people that were doing something to help the community.
And then, of course, on the other side of the adversity lays the satisfaction and the fulfillment of taking that journey. So I want you to talk to somebody that's kind of stuck in the adversity part, looking for motivation and inspiration to reach that successful part. What does it
Absolutely.
feel like?
I think the thing to think about and to do is to keep the goal in front of your mind constantly. I mean, I will tell you, even now today, I write my goals down every single day when I get up. It's the first thing I do. So just keep the goal in mind, and you have to ignore the losses and just the things that are good, the beneficial things, you need to hold those very solid. So if you have a day where it feels like everything went wrong, but maybe one thing went right, just focus on what went right.
Focus on what went right to build the momentum, but in order to continue to sharpen the tools, I'll put all the other things that went wrong up for review.
Yeah. What can you change tomorrow to have those things go better than they did the previous day?
That's where journaling becomes such a powerful tool.
Mhm.
If you've really got the intention of moving toward that mountain and getting over it, looking at examining from all the different angles, and on a piece of paper that you can look at and see becomes a very powerful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, part of it too with just the goal writing is just, okay, what do I want to see here in a month or 3 months or a year from now? And then knowing every day, like, okay, how far did I get on that goal? And what went wrong and what went right? And, what can I do now?
And realizing that the success doesn't have to be the big giant picture. It's never about the destination. It's about actually mindfully engaging in the journey.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. With intention, just really like, okay, this is my intention. And the thing with the struggle too, and we just talked about this, but that's what's going to happen. Just expect it.
You got to, and then you take that struggle and you turn that into the tools, whether it be an axe, a shelter, whatever it is. Each little piece of the puzzle brings you further and further out of survival mode, which gives you the chance to start crafting and feeling like you have a sense of control over that journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
So actually, as we start to kind of wind down, why don't you let people know a little bit more about the book, where they can get in touch with you, get a hold of the book, what you got coming up, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So I try to keep it so simple with the book. It's just a story about pizza and a storyaboutpizza.com. The pizza place is called Darks Pizza. It's DARCS. So Darks Pizza on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. They're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday from 3 to 9. And what we have coming up is, we have the first book, which is about my grandfather and his journey. And then we have a children's series that is based loosely on him, but about a little boy that immigrates from Italy to America and his journey with pizza and Italian culture and life lessons. And so we have 8 books, and the first book will be out, I think February 10th is National Pizza Day. So I think the first children's book will be out then. We just finished it like yesterday.
So before I let you go, I got to have a little bit of fun with you. What is the best toppings to go on a pizza?
Oh, I'll talk about that for an hour. That's my favorite question. Okay, so we have one. It's like a spicy. It's like a hot pepper and pepperoni. Delicious. Hot honey. Have you had hot honey on a pizza?
I have not.
Oh, it's so good. So hot peppers, pepperoni, hot honey. It's a super delicious one. We have one that's a tomato bacon that you cook pepperoni on it. That one's delicious. My all-time favorite is still the plain pizza, the plain cheese pizza. I get it every time.
I prefer ham and pineapple when I get a chance, but the other thing that I really all of a sudden popped into my head is the authenticity of the Italian aspect. Is that something that draws people a little bit to you and gives you a leg up in the game?
I think so. I mean, all the recipes are from our family. My grandfather, of course, created the pizza, and we have like my grandma made homemade chicken cutlets, so we still do the homemade cutlets. We do chicken parm sandwich. My Aunt Rose did like a homemade meatball appetizer, so we do homemade meatballs. My dad does focaccia bread. We make that fresh every day. So, yeah, I mean, it's nice. And my dad goes to Italy every year, and he usually comes back with something new he wants to add, which is really cool.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Well, Erica, thank you so much. It's been a blast. I think I'm about to order some pizza myself here.
Me too. That's a great idea.